She was just a 64-year-old secretary, counting down the days to a quiet retirement. To everyone, she was invisible. But when a furious customer started yelling, she didn't flinch. She didn't get angry. She simply changed her language. And the billionaire at the next table, who everyone thought was ignoring her, heard every single word. He left a note that would change her life forever. This is not just a story about luck. It's a story about the hidden value we all carry and the moment it's finally seen. Before we witness the moment that changes everything for Alara, do us a huge favor. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. It's how you make sure you don't miss the next story about the extraordinary hidden in plain sight. The rusty cage. The alarm clock buzzed with a sound that had long since lost its urgency, a monotonous drone that greeted Alara Vance at 6:15 a.m., just as it had for the past 42 years. 64 years old, with a face etched by time and kindness rather than bitterness, she performed her morning ritual with practiced efficiency. In the mirror, a secretary looked back. Neatly styled silver hair, a sensible cardigan, eyes that held a universe of stories she never told at the office. Her world was a small, meticulously ordered apartment in a quiet neighborhood of Boston, filled with books whose spines were cracked from love, many of them in French. A lifetime ago, she had been an exchange student in Paris, a young woman filled with dreams of travel and translation. Life, as it often does, had other plans: a sick parent, financial necessity, a stable job. The dreams were packed away, but the language remained, a secret garden she tended to alone. Her workplace, Sterling & Sterling Financial Advisors, was a gilded cage. Her boss, Mark Henderson, was a man of 38 who mistook briskness for efficiency and often spoke to her as if she were a slightly malfunctioning appliance. Alara, the Keurig is making that sound again. Alara, did you confirm my 11:30? You know how I hate waiting. She was the architecture of his day, the invisible force that kept his world turning, and he never once saw the foundation. The tension of the day began to build at 10:47 a.m. Mark had misplaced a critical client file, and his frustration was a storm cloud brewing over the open plan office. It has to be here, Alara. I left it right on your desk for scanning, he insisted, his voice tight. Alara remained calm, her heart a steady drum against her ribs. She knew she had logged and filed it correctly. The suspense wasn't in being wrong. It was in the powerlessness of being right and unseen. She located the digital timestamp on the server, proof of her competence, and presented it silently. Mark grunted, a non-apology, and stormed back into his office. The small victory tasted like dust. Later, at lunch, the emotional weight pressed down on her. Sitting at her usual small table at the Gilded Bean, a chic cafe far too modern for her taste, she felt her age. She watched the young professionals with their vibrant lives and loud conversations, feeling like a ghost at the feast of ambition. She was counting the months until retirement, not with excitement, but with a quiet dread for the vast emptiness that awaited. She was solving a difficult French crossword. Revelation Sedaine, 7 letters. Not for fun, but to feel the ghost of her younger, more vibrant self. The answer was epiphany. She didn't know it yet, but hers was sitting at the next table, watching her, a man hidden behind a newspaper and a reputation. The tempest in the teacup. The man at the next table was Arthur Croft. To the financial world, he was a legend, a billionaire venture capitalist known for his ruthless deals and monastic privacy. To the staff at the Gilded Bean, he was the older gentleman in an impeccably tailored but understated suit who always took table 7, ordered black coffee, and never made eye contact. He was hiding in plain sight, his focus entirely on the financial report spread before him. The cafe's calm was shattered by the entrance of a man in a sharp, expensive suit, his voice already raised into his cell phone. I don't care what the policy says, Jacques. This is unacceptable. Say ridicule. He slammed into the chair opposite Alara, his call continuing in rapid, angry French. Alara kept her eyes on her crossword, trying to shrink into the background. The man, whose name tag from a nearby tech conference read Luke, finally ended his call with an explosive sigh and flagged down a server. I need a double espresso. Now, and the Wi-Fi password. This place is a circus. The young server, flustered, stammered, I'm sorry, sir, I don't speak French. Luke rolled his eyes dramatically. Not the password in French. The password. Ugh, never mind. He continued his tirade, now in heavily accented English, berating the server for the slow service, the noise, the temperature of the room. He was a tempest in a teacup, and everyone was getting wet. Arthur Croft didn't look up from his papers, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He despised unprofessionalism, especially the kind that involved bullying service staff. Ilara's heart went out to the server, a girl who looked on the verge of tears. She saw her own invisibility reflected in the girl's panic. The tension in the air was thick, a social contract breaking. Then Luke made his mistake. He turned his ire directly on the girl, leaning forward. Are you even listening? Or is that too difficult for you? Something in Ilara shifted. A lifetime of being polite, of staying quiet, of being invisible cracked. She didn't stand up. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked up from her crossword, met Luke's eyes, and in flawless, Parisian-accented French said, Monsieur, votre comportement est honteux. La jeune femme fait de son mieux. Un peu de grâce, s'il vous plaît. Sir, your behavior is shameful. The young woman is doing her best. A little grace, please. The effect was instantaneous. Luke froze, his mouth agape. The server stared. The few patrons nearby fell silent. The suspense was palpable. Who was this unassuming older woman who spoke like a Parisian intellectual? Luke, shamed and embarrassed, sputtered, Vous parlez français? Oui, monsieur, Ilara replied. Her voice steady though her hands trembled beneath the table. Maintenant, peut-être que vous pourriez commander votre café comme un gentleman. Yes, sir. Now, perhaps you could order your coffee like a gentleman. Defeated, Luke muttered an order for his espresso and shrunk into his phone, thoroughly chastised. The café exhaled. The server shot Ilara a look of profound gratitude. And Arthur Croft, the billionaire at the next table, finally looked up. He didn't smile, but he saw her, truly saw her. Competence, dignity, and quiet power where he had expected none. He watched as Ilara, the flush fading from her cheeks, calmly returned to her crossword, the everyday hero returning to the shadows. He reached into his breast pocket, not for his phone, but for a small, elegant notebook and a pen. The weight of the paper. The rest of Ilara's lunch hour passed in a blur of adrenaline and lingering embarrassment. She could feel the heat of a dozen curious glances, a sensation so unfamiliar it was like being touched by a cold hand. She kept her eyes locked on the crossword, the clues now a jumble of meaningless letters. All she could think about was the man at the next table, the quiet one. Had he understood? Had he witnessed her moment of uncharacteristic audacity? She dared a glance. He was gone. Table 7 was empty, save for a half-finished cup of coffee and the morning's financial section neatly folded. A wave of relief, tinged with a strange disappointment, washed over her. Of course he was gone. Men like him didn't notice women like her. The brief fantasy that someone had truly seen her for the first time in decades felt silly now, a product of an overactive imagination fueled by workplace frustration. She gathered her things, her movements slow and heavy. As she stood to leave, her napkin fluttered the floor. Bending down to retrieve it, her eyes caught a glimpse of something else tucked just under the leg of her table. A small, thick piece of cream-colored cardstock, neatly folded once. Her first thought was that it was trash, a receipt left by a previous patron. But it was too substantial, too quality. A cold curiosity prickled at the back of her neck. She picked it up. It felt heavy in her hand, the weight of good paper. There was no name on the outside, no marking of any kind. Her heart began a slow, heavy thump against her ribs. This was no receipt. She unfolded it with fingers that had suddenly gone clumsy. The message inside was typed in a crisp, classic font, a single line of text centered on the page. No greeting, no signature, just 10 words that made the bustling cafe around her fall into a dead, silent vacuum. Your value is evident. My office, 100 Federal Street, 50th floor, 5 p.m., Ilara's breath hitched. She read it again, and a third time. The words refused to change, refused to make any more sense than they had the first time. Your value is evident. It was a statement so foreign, so utterly disconnected from her own self-perception, that it felt like it was written in a code she couldn't crack. 1,000 questions erupted in her mind, a chaotic symphony of panic and disbelief. Who was it from? The Frenchman, Luc, seeking some form of twisted apology or retribution. No, that didn't feel right. The server, playing an elaborate joke? Unthinkable. There was only one possibility, and it was the most terrifying of all. The man at table 7. The quiet one with the intense focus. He had left a note. He had seen everything. But who was he? A client of Mark's? A competitor? A stranger? The address, 100 Federal Street, was one of the most prestigious addresses in Boston, a skyscraper that pierced the financial district skyline, housing hedge funds, law firms, and corporate titans. The 50th floor. That was the pinnacle, the penthouse level. Power and money in its most concentrated form. And he wanted to see her. At 5 p.m. The rest of the afternoon at Sterling, and Sterling was a study in surrealism. Ilara moved through her tasks like an automaton, her body performing the familiar motions of filing, typing, and answering phones while her mind was 50 stories high in a glass tower. Every time Mark Henderson barked an order, the words on the note echoed in her head. Your value is evident. He needed her to find a report from 2018. Your value is evident. He complained the coffee was lukewarm. Your value is evident. The note was a bomb that had exploded her quiet, predictable world. Was this a job interview? For what? She was a 64-year-old secretary. Her resume was a chronicle of loyalty, not ambition. Was it something else? Something sinister? The paranoid thoughts of a lifetime spent watching true crime documentaries surfaced. Was it safe? A mysterious billionaire summons a woman to his private office after hours. The scenario wrote itself. But then she remembered his eyes. In the fleeting moment she had allowed herself to look at him, she hadn't seen malice or predation. She had seen assessment, a cool, analytical focus, like a jeweler examining a stone under a loupe. At 4:30 p.m., she told Mark she had a personal errand to run and needed to leave early. He barely looked up from his computer screen, waving a dismissive hand. Just make sure the dialing files are on my desk first thing tomorrow, Ilara. The invisibility, once a source of pain, now felt like a shield. The walk to 100 Federal Street was a blur of gleaming glass and polished granite. The lobby was a cathedral of capitalism, with a 30-foot ceiling and a security desk that looked like the bridge of a starship. Her sensible shoes were silent on the marble floor as she approached, the note clutched in her damp hand. "Can I help you, ma'am?" the security guard asked, his tone polite but clearly wondering if she was lost. I have an appointment." "The 50th floor," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He took the note from her, his eyebrows rising almost imperceptibly as he read it. He picked up a phone, spoke quietly into it, and nodded. "Right this way, ma'am. The private elevator is over here. It's keyed for the top floor." The elevator was paneled in rich, dark wood and brass. It was utterly silent as it ascended, the numbers flashing by with dizzying speed. No music, no sound of machinery, just a low hum of power and the pounding of her own heart. With a soft, final ding, the door slid open directly into a reception area. It wasn't an office. It was an eyrie. The entire far wall was a single curved pane of glass offering a breathtaking, terrifying view of the Boston skyline, the harbor, and the distant Atlantic. The room was sparsely but beautifully furnished. A single modern sculpture, a low-slung leather sofa, a desk with nothing on it but a single monitor. And standing at the window, his back to her, was the man from the cafe, Arthur Croft. He turned around. He wasn't smiling, but his expression was not unkind. It was deeply serious. "Ilara Vance," he said. His voice was calm, low, and carried an authority that filled the vast space. "Thank you for coming. I imagine you have questions." Ilara could only stand there, a woman from a small apartment, holding her worn purse, in the sky palace of a billionaire, completely and utterly speechless. The greatest suspense of her life was not about what would happen next. It was about why she was there at all. The area and the offer, the silence in the pent office was immense, broken only by the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the city 50 stories below. Arthur Croft watched her, his gaze patient, giving her the space to absorb the view, the room, the sheer improbability of her presence there. He understood the power of a first impression, and this room was designed to make one. Illyra's voice, when she finally found it, was thin, a wisp of sound in the vastness. You know my name." "A necessary first step," Croft replied, his tone matter-of-fact, not boastful. He gestured to the leather sofa. "Please sit. Would you like some water? Tea?" The normality of the question in such an abnormal setting was jarring. She shook her head, mechanically moving to the sofa and perching on its edge, her back straight, as if at a job interview, which she supposed this might be, though for what job, she couldn't begin to guess. He took a seat in a simple chair opposite her, leaning forward slightly, his elbows on his knees. He steepled his fingers. "What you did today at the Gilded Bean was impressive," he began, cutting directly to the heart of the matter. "It wasn't just the French, though it was flawless. It was the intervention. You saw an injustice, you assessed a situation, and you executed a solution with precision and, crucially, with minimal drama. You restored order with a few quiet words. That is a rare skill." Illyra felt a flush creep up her neck. Praise from Mark Henderson was a curt fine. This was something else entirely. It was being seen under a microscope, every cell of her action examined and valued. It was unsettling. How do you know what I did was rare?" she asked, her courage returning in small increments. "Because I make it my business to understand competence," he said. "I invest in it, in people. I watched that man berate the staff for 90 seconds. 3 separate employees saw it. 2 looked away. 1 argued ineffectively. You solved it. You didn't seek credit. You didn't wait for a manager. You simply fixed it. Then you went back to your crossword." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Revelation, Sedaine. 7 letters. The answer is epiphany." Illyra's blood ran cold. He hadn't just heard her. He had been watching closely enough to see her puzzle. The feeling of being observed so intimately was invasive, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. "Who are you?" she whispered, though she suspected she knew. The name would come to her later. Arthur Croft, the reclusive ghost of Federal Street. A man known for pulling companies out of death spirals and disappearing again. "My name is Arthur Croft. I run a venture capital firm from this office. We don't invest in ideas, Ms. Vance. Not solely. We invest in operational integrity. We find companies with solid core that are being mismanaged, undervalued, or are simply stuck. We acquire controlling interest, and we install what I call keystone personnel, individuals who possess that same skill you displayed today, the ability to see a broken system and fix it quietly and efficiently." He paused, letting the words hang in the air between them. Illyra's mind raced, trying to connect the dots. Companies, acquisitions, keystone personnel. "I'm a secretary," she said, the words sounding small and inadequate in the luxurious room. "You are a master of operational integrity in a 12 by 15-foot office," he corrected her, his voice sharpening for first time. "For over 40 years, you've been the unseen engine of every place you've worked. You manage workflows, you anticipate problems, you soothe egos, you maintain systems. You are, unless I am very much mistaken, the reason your current boss, Mark Henderson, has any semblance of a functioning practice." It was true. Every word of it was true. She was the one who reorganized a filing system when things went missing. She was the one who remembered clients' wife's name or their anniversary, subtly reminding Mark moments before a call. She was the dam holding back a river of chaos. "What I am offering you," Croft continued, his voice dropping back to its calm, measured tone, "is a project, a test, if you will. I have a portfolio company, a boutique publishing house called Veritas Editions. It is beautiful on the outside, award-winning books, a proud history. Inside, it is a disaster. Mismanaged schedules, toxic internal culture, brilliant editors at war with the finance department. It is leaking money and talent. The CEO is a visionary with no head for numbers. The COO is a bean counter with no soul. They are tearing each other apart. He stood up and walked to his desk, picking up a single thin folder. He handed it to her. This is a summary. Their financials, their org chart, their upcoming titles. I want you to go there. You will be introduced as a temporary executive assistant, a shared resource of the top brass to help streamline communication. A perfectly boring, invisible title. Ilera took the folder, her hands trembling. She understood now. He wasn't offering her a job. He was offering her a mission. Your objective is not to make decisions or give orders. Your objective is to observe, to listen, to be the person you are at your core, the one who sees a broken piece and knows how to fix it. You will report only to me. After 30 days, you will sit where you are sitting now, and you will tell me what is truly wrong at Veritas Editions and how to fix it, not based on theory, based on the evidence you gather from the inside. The sheer scale of the proposition was dizzying. He was asking her to be a corporate spy, a diagnostician, a secret weapon. He was betting on her perception, on her lifetime of being unseen, as the ultimate tool. The pay for this 30-day project is $50,000, he said, as casually as he were quoting the price of a cup of coffee. If your assessment proves accurate and actionable, a permanent role as my personal operational analyst awaits, with a compensation package that will ensure you never have to worry about retirement again. You can choose to retire comfortably, or you can step into a second act most people never dream of. He looked at her, his eyes unwavering. This is not charity, Ms. Vance. This is an investment. I saw an asset everyone else overlooks. The question is, do you see in yourself? The weight of the folder in her hand felt like the weight of every dismissed idea, every overlooked contribution, every silent victory of her entire career. It was the weight of her own value, finally measured and found to be substantial. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach. But beneath it, something else was stirring, something she hadn't felt in 20 years. It was a faint, thrilling tremor of possibility. Arthur Croft had not just given her an offer. He had handed her a key and pointed her toward a door she never knew existed. All she had to do was find the courage to turn it. The unseen architect. The silence in Arthur Croft's airy stretched, thick and heavy as the fog beginning to curl over the Boston skyline behind him. $50,000. 30 days. A chance to prove that a lifetime of quiet competence wasn't just a consolation prize. It was a rare and powerful skill. Ilera Vance looked from the folder in her hands to the man who saw a weapon where the world saw a wallpaper. Fear screamed a dozen rational objections. She was too old. She was out of her depth. It was a trick, a billionaire's eccentric game. But a louder voice, one she had silenced for decades, whispered a single word: epiphany. She took a deep breath, the air tasting of polished leather and immense possibility. I'll need to give my current employer 2 weeks' notice, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. It's the right thing to do. A flicker of approval crossed Croft's impassive face. Integrity is not negotiable. The project begins in 2 weeks and 1 day. Use the time to review the file. My assistant, Ms. Cho, will be your sole point of contact. You will tell no one. Understood? Ilera nodded, the reality of the secrecy adding a layer of thrilling gravity to the mission. Understood. The following 2 weeks at Sterling and Sterling were the strangest of her life. Every mundane task, scheduling Mark's dentist appointment, calming a panic intern, untangling a spreadsheet, was now viewed through a new lens. She wasn't just keeping afloat, she was practicing. She was a field agent in a cardigan, observing the ecosystem of a small office, understanding its dysfunctions, and silently, efficiently, maintaining its fragile balance. When she handed Mark her letter of retirement, his reaction was a masterpiece of obliviousness. Retirement? Well, I suppose it's that time, isn't it? He said, barely looking up from his phone. HR will handle your exit interview. Just make sure you finish the quarterly reports before you go. And for God's sake, leave a detailed note about the filing system. On her last day, he gave her a generic gift card to a chain restaurant and a hurried good luck. As she walked out for the final time, she felt no bitterness, only a profound sense of closure. The rusty cage was open. She was already flying. Veritas Editions was housed in converted brownstone, all exposed brick and creaking with floors, a stark contrast to Croft's sterile pinnacle. It smelled of old paper, fresh coffee, and simmering tension. She was introduced as planned. This is Illara. She's here to help streamline things between departments. Make her welcome. For the first week, she was perfectly, beautifully invisible. She fetched coffee, took meticulous notes in meetings where editors and accountants spoke different, warring languages, and mastered the Byzantine filing system everyone complained about but no one had fixed. She was a ghost, and ghosts hear everything. She saw the brilliant, passionate editor, Lena, whose acquisitions were critically acclaimed but constantly over budget. She saw the rigid CFO, David, who rejected every creative expense, blind to the fact that he was strangling the golden geese. She saw the defeated CEO, Robert, a man who loved books but hated conflict, trapped between the two factions, paralyzed. The conflict came to a head in a meeting about Lena's flagship project, a translation of an obscure French novel she was certain would be a sleeper hit. David slammed the budget down. The translation costs alone are astronomical. We can't justify it based on her gut feeling. It's not a gut feeling. It's a work of art. It needs a specific, nuanced hand. Lena fired back, her voice cracking with frustration. Robert sighed, rubbing his temples. Is there a compromise? A cheaper translator? Illara, sitting silently in the corner taking notes, saw the flaw in the entire system. It wasn't about compromise. It was about a complete failure of communication. David saw numbers. Lena saw art. Robert saw a headache. No one saw the business. That night, in her small apartment, she pored over the files Croft had given her, cross-referencing them with what she'd observed. She didn't sleep. She worked, not as a secretary, but as an analyst, as an architect. The day of her meeting with Croft arrived. She rode the silent elevator up, the folder in her bag no longer feeling like a test, but like evidence. He was at the window, same as before. He turned. Report. Illara didn't sit. She stood in the center of the room, her posture not of an employee, but of an equal delivering a briefing. The problem at Veritas is not financial mismanagement or creative overspending. The problem is structural. You have a creative department and a finance department reporting to a CEO who acts as an ineffective referee. They're not on the same team. She laid out her evidence. She showed how David's rigid quarterly forecasts failed to account for the long-tail revenue of award-winning books. She demonstrated how Lena's passion projects, if properly budgeted with phased payments tied to milestones, could be financially viable. She had drafted a new hybrid approval process where creative and finance co-authored business cases for major projects, forcing dialogue and mutual understanding. She needs to understand margin. He needs to understand cultural value. Robert needs to lead them to a common goal, not just split the difference. The toxicity is a symptom. The disease is a broken operational model. She finished. The only sound was the distant hum of the city. Arthur Croft did not smile, but he gave a single, slow nod. The assessment is accurate and actionable, exactly as I expected. He walked to his desk and picked up a single sheet of paper. Your permanent offer. The title is Director of Operational Integration. You will report directly to me. Your first assignment is to implement your plan at Veritas. You will have full authority. Illara looked at the compensation package. It was life-changing. It was freedom. But more than the number, it was a title. Director. She had never been a director of anything. She thought of the crossword. Revelation Sedan. A sudden revelation. Her entire life had been a prelude to this moment, not an ending to be endured. The hidden value Arthur Croft had seen wasn't just her French or her quiet intervention. It was her ability to see the connections others missed, to find the harmony in discord. She had spent a lifetime building invisible architectures of efficiency. Now, she was being given the tools to build them on a scale she'd never dreamed possible. She picked up the pen on his desk. It felt solid, weighted, not with the heft of expensive metal, but with the weight of a future she had earned. She signed her name, Illara Vance, with a hand that did not tremble. She wasn't just a secretary who got lucky. She was an unseen architect, and she had just been handed the blueprint to her own destiny. Ilara's story proves that value isn't about your title, your age, or your visibility. It's about the quiet strength you carry within. If this story reminded you that your own potential might be waiting for its moment to be seen, then do us a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Your next moment of inspiration is just one story away.